the aim of this little video is to actually start to put some ground into two different types of strategy that we'll be looking at. And so at the end of watching this video, I hope that those of you who have viewed it will be able to understand and characterise the idea of both planned strategy and emergent strategy. And perhaps to some extent to recognise that in fact the two are not completely different. Emergent strategy may well be the one that people often think is the most effective in real life, but if you have a plan, you are more likely to be able to achieve a reaction to any emergent problem that comes along. If you don't have a plan, then in fact the emergent problems may well take you by surprise. You may be unprepared and be unable to react to them. But there's also difficulty with planned strategies. It can become controlling. Indeed, in the creation of an online course recently, we fell in with some major serious emergent problems of strike action. The organiser of the course had decided to arrange a few high-profile videos that should be filmed, and they didn't seem to get into their heads that actually we're going to lose 4 weeks of work, and it was more important to get the course ready than it was to get some publicity ready. We already had a large number of students signed up to start in 2 months' time, and therefore deciding to concentrate on making posh videos that would be used for publicity was ridiculous, because we really needed to concentrate on getting forward. But they had a planned strategy and a route of things, and because they spent money to hire professional videographers to come in on a particular day, they were unable to recognise that in fact going ahead with this was ridiculous because they had better work to do. This was where they become trapped by the plan. The plan should help you react to what changes in the environment and what emerges, but it must not become a trap. And also we're going to try and look at some of the specific elements of strategy and build strategy up. Instead of looking from the top and saying we have a plan or emergent, maybe look at what is strategy, what do we need to have for strategy, what's it that makes something a strategy? And then by putting those together, then hopefully we'll start to understand how we characterise a whole strategy, which we might be reactive, we might be emergent, but we do so in the context perhaps of an overarching plan that helps to guide us.
A few definitions. So what is strategy? And there's a number of people who put forward things. Strategy can be a planning process. Strategy is a set of analytical tools. It is a way of looking at the environment, a way of looking at the organisation. The strategy itself is the future plans, is the medium to long term of an organisation. And that is so we talk about the strategy. What is it we're going to be doing in the future? But also strategy can be seen as the glue. It can be the thing that binds the organisation together. It can be the thing that gives us the culture of an organisation. And so, often said, if it's done properly, strategy can bring bits of the organisation together. It can make sure we're all working for the same goals. This sort of glue that makes sure that everyone buys in to what the organisation is trying to do. And in some way, strategy is a way of determining, above and all else, what is the organisational purpose of the organisation? What is the competitive factors that affect the organisation? How do we define our tasks? How do we signal our corporate intent? It is related to the scope of an organisation, and it must also, as we've already noted, be related to the values and expectations of all of an organisation's stakeholders. A good mission statement addresses the needs of everybody. It can often be said to be bound up with the culture of an organisation, but also with its structure. It can be argued form follows function. Structure dictates strategy. And this is the very early works on strategy were like this. And to a certain extent, they were right, but they were of their time. So if you look at the works of Chandler, for instance, Porter argues the spread of good practice means it is not possible to compete solely by being effective. You have to be different now. There are many, many good organisations. There are many, many effective organisations. There are many, many efficient organisations. You have to be consistent and have a clear purpose. So the example of that is Ryanair, low cost and other low cost airlines. Very, very good at what it does. Low fares, secondary airports, strict operation instructors mean less luggage, quick turnaround, no seat reservations, etc. Often by many people seen as very unpleasant and many, many complaints, but they are still very successful organisations. So it's very, very important to remember that when we're discussing what is strategy. It's also important to remember that strategy can become of two types. There can be a prescriptive strategy, where people actually say strategies will be done this way. It is a linear strategy. It's a rational process. They would do that. We sit down sometimes once every year or once every 5 years, and we actually plan things forward. In some ways, this can actually be organizational culture. I mean, some organizations, they will take members from throughout the organization, from the shop floor to the board director, they'll put them in a room together, and they will actually use strategy as a kind of team building process, strategy of culture building process. And in some cases, what is actually produced is not important. It doesn't matter if anyone reads the 5,000 word report that comes out of this event. What matters is that the people who took part in it go away from the event and evangelize for it. Say, oh, I sat next to the vice chancellor, I sat next to the senior member, and I've been involved in these myself, and this is what we learned, and this is what we're going to do. And so therefore, that's the reporting process, that's the dissemination process. But it can also be an emergent strategy. Can we just say that you start off with saying, we know where we're trying to get to, and then we set off on the road, and we just see how we get there. And so it sort of says, and it's important to most of us, is the environment you in effect whether you choose prescriptive emergent strategy? Is it important to sit down and discuss your strategy regularly, regardless of whether you're trying for prescriptive rational strategies or you're going for emergent strategy? Is the public sector fundamentally different in the way that it should approach strategies? So let's look at the prescriptive approach. Okay. It can be argued that both prescriptive and emergent approaches to strategy are equally valid, and they also can be argued that they're not mutually exclusive. So some people have said it's going to be a linear thing, a linear rational process, and other people have said, well, actually, no, it's going to be more when we set objectives, you set them in advance, and you understand the main elements of the strategy as you go forward. But of course, changes occur all the time, both in organisations and the environments in which they operate. And organisations need to be adaptable to be able to respond and cope with these changes. So perhaps it's not a case of prescriptive or emergence, perhaps it's a way of combining them, but having a prescriptive strategy, setting up a way of approaching things, but understanding that no plan survives contact with the enemy. And therefore it means that you must be willing to change these. Okay? The emergent approach is obviously arguing the opposite direction. It's saying that actually the corporate strategy emerges as things happen. It's evolving, incremental, and continuous. It might even be that the final objective is unclear, and the elements that are going to be used as they come through the course of life vary a lot. Often people argue that actually it's not only that the prescriptive approach is not appropriate, it's actually the prescriptive approach is not strategy. It's often argued that, in fact, if you use a prescriptive approach, you are not doing strategy. And so what matters in the end is that you actually be adaptable and organizations be capable of reacting. But of course, it's also argued that, like I said, using these things united together, using them as you intend to use them, setting an outside ends may be prescriptive, but it may well be once you've set the ends prescriptively, the way you get there can be emergent. It may well be that you use the fact we all sit around a table to discuss strategy, not to actually produce the report as importance, but getting people to actually then become leaving that meeting, leaving that group and feeling they were part of it, so becoming strategy heroes, strategy leaders, and going out throughout the organisation. So you might well have people from the shop floor sat on the same committee. You have people who are the vice chancellor, people from the board of directors sat on committees, and this is where you build a culture of an organisation that's culturally strategic. So what do we mean by rational intended strategy? So Chandler, one of the early people, was people who believed in structure, determination of the basic long-term goals and objects of his enterprise, and the adoption of a course of action, allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. Very, very straightforward, very, very rational. And it very much reflects Chandler himself was ex-military from the Second World War, and the strategy's military origin. Strategy itself is a Greek word meaning general strip, and more literally to mean stratos is army and agean is to lead. So strategos, agean, army to lead, and a strategic is to lead an army. And often it's evolved from this case, but many of it came doing that. I mean, I myself obviously have argued for the works of Sun Tzu, which are called The Art of War, and Sun Tzu was a very successful ancient Chinese general, and so it's quite important that we recognise this. But it's also important that quite often people criticise strategy in the public sector. They'll